Hello, my name is Jeremy Davis. Some of you know me, or perhaps maybe this video has made it to people who don't. If not, I invite you to watch some of my other videos. They are nothing at all like what I'm going to talk about today. In the last 5 months, I have lost 43, maybe 44 pounds. I'm kind of proud of that. And for me, that was my first true embarkation into losing weight. And so I found myself surprised by by several things in the process of losing weight. And one of those things is how often I am asked for an explanation of how I did it. People are shopping for a program that makes sense to them. I think that's wise. I do not think that all body types are the same. I do not think that all dieting will work the same for all people. And I encourage you to find a system that works. Unfortunately, I fear that sometimes people seeking new programs is a way of avoiding accountability to what they are doing. Nothing about me losing weight could have been done if I had not decided that it was worth the character to make myself do things I did not want to do, or not do things that I really wanted to do. So I can't make it easy for you. It wasn't easy for me, but it was easier than I expected. And because of that, I wanted to tell you a little bit about my background. I was truly surprised that people were so interested in the methodology. And because they've been asking me, I decided to make this video. Prior to 5 months ago, I was not interested enough in losing weight to change my life. I was willing to do things within my life as it was that would help me to lose weight. I was not willing to make a career of losing weight. I still am not willing to make a career out of losing weight. I do not want to be someone who thinks that that's an interesting topic. By and large, it isn't. I wanted to live. At that point, 5 months ago, I was satisfied with what I could do. I was up and active. It wasn't like my weight had kept me from things that I wanted to do. But I had an interesting experience. I was with my father. My father has been very healthy, very active for years, and despite that, he has had a number of heart events. And because of that, he was in talking with a cardiologist about a procedure that was coming. And as I sat and listened to that cardiologist and looked at my father, I realized that there's no reason that my cardiologist, if I had one, wouldn't be saying exactly the same thing to me in another 20, 25 years. I was on the same trajectory as my father, and I simply wanted to, and I think maybe the biggest thing for me is I'm cheap. I did not want the cost that had incurred over the years for my dad with these various heart events. That none of them had taken his life. They had been somewhat serious, but doctors are amazing. They can handle so much. But even if they do a great job and you barely notice, it costs a lot of money. And so maybe it was because I was cheap, but that message came on the day that I was ready to hear it. I began thinking about changing something in my health. But I had a serious question about what. What should I do? I had some ideas, and I had also had some experiences previous to that. Let me tell you about one. I realized that for me, probably the biggest problem, I was eating good meals. My wife is a great cook. She cooks whole food, very natural. I was eating good food at the table. I also had decided to downsize. I was eating one portion of food. Previously, I would eat until I was done eating, and I'd eat all I wanted. But I had downsized my portions, and I was eating a lot of good food at the table, but I was snacking. And so I decided that I wanted to attack that one area, and the way that made sense to me to attack that one area was to replace snacking. I didn't think that I could change the behavior, but I could change what I snacked on. So I began buying baby carrots. And I would make sure that I always had baby carrots with me to eat. And I would force myself, I would set an amount, and I had to snack on that much before I could snack on something else. I think it was a huge step forward. But as I mentioned it to people, there was always, this frustrated me, there was always something negative. Somebody would say, oh, don't you know baby carrots? They use chemicals to take the peeling off, and then they wash away, but there's residual chemicals that you shouldn't be eating. And I'm like, oh man, chemicals. Oh, and carrots still have a lot of carbs. And I'm just like, wait a minute. I am not sitting down to a serving of sugar or chips or whatever. Isn't that good? And I think it was. But the message that I was getting, and I'm afraid the message you might have gotten from an awful lot of dieting, is you never quite measure up. I mean, you could like go live on a mountain, eat goat curds and bean sprouts, and somebody would climb that mountain on their hands and knees and say, are those sprouts organic? Somebody is always out there to rain on your parade. I don't know if it's because people have a lot of angst in their own failure, or if there's just been a cycle of saying, nope, what you're doing isn't good enough, it isn't good enough, it isn't good enough. But it was that occurrence, my experience with baby carrots, that made me realize I can't trust anyone with a diet program. They are trying to make money. They're trying to make me feel bad. I just decided I can't trust them. I have to come up with something that makes sense for me. I want you to do the same thing. I don't want you to take my system and say, now I'm going to use Jeremy's system. I want you to use your system. But if it would help, I'm willing to tell you my system, because you might grab some pieces of it. And it has worked. Now, hopefully a year from now, I'll be making a video that tells you about how to keep the weight off. I think I have some ideas. But for now, I am telling you a way in which I lost 45 pounds in about 4.5, 5 months. And I feel like I succeeded. So as I was going about trying to figure out what is my plan for losing weight going to be, I knew two things. One is I knew that I wanted to be satisfied. I did not believe in myself that I could live a life always craving something. I could for a day. I could for a week. But unless I found a way to sit down, eat things, and say, I'm full, I'm comfortable, I'm happy, that eventually starving myself would not work. I would give in. I would go back. I needed to have a system, a program that kept me satisfied. Now, there was some need to change what satisfied me. I accepted that. But I was unwilling to say I am going to have to live always a little bit hungry or a lot hungry. So that was number one. Number one, I wanted to make sure that I was satisfied. Second, I wanted to make sure that I had success. I wanted to make a system that would take me where I was at that moment, stopping by the convenience store and buying a pop and a snack, maybe a pop and a candy bar, or if I was feeling healthy, buying chips instead of a candy bar. Anything had to be better than that. So, I wanted a system that was built around a series of successes, not some high standard that I would fail at most days and occasionally succeed. So I wanted to be satisfied, I wanted to have success, and there was one more thing that made sense to me. And I can't believe that for so long I didn't understand it. I actually had it explained in the oddest of places. It was explained by Rush Limbaugh on his radio program when he was talking about weight loss. He made the connection for me with insulin. Now, Prior to that, I don't know what I thought. I guess I thought that insulin was in our bodies to make some people diabetics. That's like the only purpose I ever knew was that having insulin or not having insulin would make you diabetic. And I'd had some experiences with diabetics that were very dangerous. I saw some people, I saw someone lose some toes from having too much blood sugar. But I never thought that insulin had a purpose other than to give people diabetes. I understand, and it is not a scientific understanding. I think it's based on science, but I understand today what insulin is for. And to help you understand what I understand, I have brought along Minions. These are my Minions. My kids have a whole package. I can hold them up. I can't get them close. No, my arm isn't long enough. But you know them. They're the little guys. It's a pretty funny movie. All right. They are workers, fairly mindless. They do what they're told. They are Minions. And these today are my insulin Minions. Insulin Minions are in your body. Your pancreas produces them. Your pancreas is like the Union Hall for the insulin Minions. They all camp out there and wait until they're called. And when they're called, insulin Minions have one job. Their job is to make fat. Now, I have little pieces of wood here, but I think they look a little bit like butter pats, okay? So the insulin Minion's job is to make fat, and particular, you notice how these pats of butter are nice and square? We can stack them up. They are making fat that can be easily stored. That's what they do. They make fat to store. What do they use to make that fat? Well, they use sugar. Sugary snacks. They don't just use sugar. They use carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are a carbon, a hydrogen, and an oxygen locked in such a way that there's a lot of energy there. Carbohydrates are not bad. Carbohydrates are great. It's just we live in a country, a great country, where there are lots and lots of them available. You can get carbs. And every time you get carbs, every time you eat something, here we have a little Reese's peanut butter cup. Okay? Not big. I pop this into my mouth and something happens. The Minions, the insulin Minions, get called out of the pancreas and they go to work. And they start taking the sugar that's in this little Reese's cup and they start turning it into fat. Fat that they can stack up in a nice pile. Where do they stack that pile? Well, you got a great spot around your stomach where you can stack up and store a lot of fat. So the Minions come to work and they start making fat because you had carbohydrates. So the answer then must be to have no carbohydrates. There's a problem with having no carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are intensely satisfying. They do something for you that is a big cause of hunger. There are a whole list of reasons why you get hungry, but one of the biggest ones is that your blood has sugar in it. That blood sugar is necessary. Every part of your body needs those blood sugars in them. They don't need too much, but if they get too little, it will affect how you think. It will affect how you feel. Low blood sugar is a dramatic event in your body. So what happens is when your blood sugar gets low, your body says, hey, I need something to make sure I have enough blood sugar. So what do? You eat something sugary. You eat a carbohydrate. Sugar is a simple carbohydrate. Something like chips would be a complex carbohydrate. But you take that carbohydrate to get that sugar back in your blood. The problem is that very quickly you go from having enough sugar in your blood to having too much. And then the whistle goes off, the flashing lights, if you remember from the movie, all Minions assemble. And all the Minions come and they start taking that blood sugar and turning it into fat. Well, if you've got a lot of Minions working, They are they are busy turning it into fat. That's bad. I don't like that fat. I don't really care how much I weigh. I don't like how I look when I'm carrying a whole lot of fat. So the minions go to work, they start producing fat. But the minions have a great union. And they have, in their master agreement, their union says, if you call a union to work, he gets to work a full shift. He doesn't go home. So what happens when you eat your sugar is that a whole bunch of minions, I'm going to gob them together, minions come to work, start taking sugar and making fat, and pretty soon, in order to get sugar to make fat, they're taking sugar out of your bloodstream. And so what happens to you? You start feeling weak and shaky. So what do you need to do? Go to the pantry and grab another one. Pop it in, just a little pick me up. And what do? And then more minions come back to work. They're making more fat. They're starting to take that fat out of your bloodstream. You've got to have sugar in your bloodstream. And so you got to go eat something again. People get caught in a cycle. A cycle of needing blood sugar, eating, having insulin burst, having fat made, making too much fat, needing something. And back again and again and again. A lot of people are trapped in that. I wanted to avoid that insulin. I didn't want anybody making fat. But you need some, right? I need some blood sugar. So that was when I discovered about a concept. A concept that is very interesting. Let me hold up two things. This is almond butter. Almond butter has carbs. This is a Reese's peanut butter cup. It has chocolate and peanuts, but that peanut butter has sugar in it. Okay? What's the difference between having almond butter? I got a little price tag on there. It looks kind of odd, but I get my almond butter on sale. So anyway, I'm proud of that. Anybody wants to go to a good place to shop, go to L&M Amish Grocery, and you can get a good deal. Anyway, there's my plug. Here's your two choices. When I eat this, whistle goes out. A whole bunch of minions come. They start making fat. Because there's a lot of minions, pretty soon they've taken all of this sugar, they've made it into fat, they're going to start pulling sugar out of my bloodstream so they can make more fat, and I'm going to get really hungry. I'm going to crave that. So what happens when I take almond butter? Here are the minions sitting, whoops, I lost one, sitting over in their minion hall, all right, waiting to be called. When I have almond butter, a very small number of minions come. It's called the glycemic index. Instead of, boom, sugar in my blood, calling all the minions, I have almond butter, and there's carbohydrates. But they very slowly come into my bloodstream. So the call goes out, and I got maybe four minions here. And they go to work. They're going to work for a whole shift, right? Because of the union, they're going to work a whole shift. But in that whole shift, they're going to gradually take the excess sugar that comes from this carbohydrate, and they're going to slowly make a few fat to store. And about the time that my almond butter is running out, they're ready to go home. And you know what? They aren't stealing the sugars out of my bloodstream. I break the cycle of constantly being hungry and then having all of the insulin come and then being hungry again. I broke that. I reduced the amount of fat that was stored. I slowly turned some of that excess sugar into fat. The rest of that excess sugar I used for energy in my body. And then it went away. And all I had was maybe a little bit of fat, which then could be used. Wow, this is a huge difference. It's called the glycemic index. I wanted to do something so that I could avoid carbohydrates. I wanted to, what? Remember? I wanted to feel satisfied, I wanted to have success, and I wanted to avoid carbs. Because I did not want to keep calling in, I love Coke. Can of Coke is great for me. Man, they're getting extra. They're getting a whole stack of minions because that Coke hits my bloodstream. And they right away go to work making fat. I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to find things that would satisfy me that I could eat, where at most I would call in a small number of insulin and a small amount of fat, but basically gradually increase my blood sugars and let them drop off. So it required me learning some things. I had to learn about the glycemic index. I got an app on my phone that tells me the glycemic index. There's no magic number. That wasn't for me. It was just high, medium, and low. I wanted to have low glycemic. And I wanted to learn what those things were which didn't have carbs. There are lots of food. Meats don't have carbs. Cheeses usually don't. Some, but it's very low. Vegetables, some have carbs, but the carbs are low glycemic, and there's not very many carbs in them. Cauliflower is great. For me, the perfect meal is if I make myself a stir fry. I have meat, I have celery, I maybe have some mushrooms, I sometimes put in an olive and fry it in there. I have some oil, which is fat, but it's not carbs. To give it just that little bit of crunch, I will take a handful of almonds or cashews, a very low glycemic nut, and I will fry them in. And here I have a delicious filling meal with a tiny serving of low glycemic carbs. I get to feel success. In order to deal with that, I want you to look at this. This is the circle. I wanted to design a system where I could have success. And in this system, I began to say, I want to look at what I can eat, not look at what I can't eat. So instead of having a bullseye that is success and all the rest is failure, I wanted to say, I only have a very little thing that I really want to get rid of. That is simple carbs. I'm going to put a better word on it. This is not going to turn out even, but that's okay. This is sugars. Sugary snacks. I could eat a Twix bar right now. Right? That's right there for me, is a Twix bar. Or, I told you it, a can of Coke. Right there. That's what I wanted to avoid. But because there's lots of other carbs, there's a second layer. That second layer is a thing called complex carbs. For me, this would be a piece of toast. I really miss being able to go and make a piece of toast. Very satisfying. But white bread with wheat is high glycemic. It's complex carb. It's far better than having something sugary. But it still is calling a lot of the minions to work making fat. And I want to call very few. Okay? So we have sugars, simple carbs, and we have our complex carbs. The next layer, and this isn't different than complex carbs, but I would say the next layer is high glycemic whole foods. High glycemic whole foods. You're going to have to make your own. I don't have a copy for you, but that's the next layer. High glycemic whole foods. What's a high glycemic whole food? Well, a high glycemic whole food is a wheat cracker instead of a white cracker. You're still getting about the same amount of on the glycemic index, but you are eating everything, and that's going to include a lot of fiber. That fiber is good for you. That fiber is a carbohydrate, but it doesn't count because it isn't digestible. It doesn't make it to your bloodstream, or it makes it very slowly. So if I can have the whole food, it's better than having just a part. Okay? From that, the next level, of course, makes sense. would be medium glycemic. Then there's low glycemic. And then out here is something that we have available. I don't like them much. My wife doesn't like them, but for now I want to make use of them. They are chemicals. Breathe. I mean, I could pull this up close and you could look at the ingredient panel on this and you would say, I don't even know what that is except for water. After that, it's like, it's totally a chemical concoction. Probably not a great thing for me to have a lot of. However, remember what my goal was. My goal was to be satisfied. And I decided if this helps me to be satisfied, then it's worth it for the time being. I don't know how long. I didn't used to drink diet pop, but diet products are good. I have some Atkins products. They're low in carbs. They give me a very fulfilling meal without many insulin minions being called to work. I like that because, right, I want to be satisfied. Okay, so let me explain how this works. I'm going through life, right? I want to. It's victory if I can avoid a can of Coke or a Twix bar. You fill in the list with what you want. It's victory. So I want to make sure that I don't go and have a can of Coke. And the best way for me to avoid that is to try everything else on the way. So I'm going through the day. I do have meal times. Those meals are centered around a low carb, something that can fill up my stomach. But even though I've filled my stomach with, say, a stir fry, I get to feeling hungry. And I start thinking, I wonder what I could have. For me, I have to cheat. I make myself cheat in a very systematic way. First, I'm going to try some chemicals and see if maybe I'm just wanting to eat because I'm bored, or maybe just craving a little something. I've got an empty stomach. So I will have a snack that isn't the best, but for now it's what I want. I'm going to have some free chemicals. I'm going to drink a lot of water to keep my system detox, but that's going to be where I start. All right? Next, if that doesn't satisfy me, I am going to have a low glycemic option. I make sure that I have, ta-da, almond butter, right? As a matter of fact, almond butter is a little bit processed. It gets a little quicker. I like the whole almonds. I make sure I have them. So I'll go and have a small handful of almonds. Am I satisfied? Then I've accomplished my goal. If not, maybe I'll go to the next. For me, right here, corn. So whole corn, it's been extruded, so it may be a little higher glycemic. But for me, this is great. I really like these. And I'll tell you the role that Fritos have had for me. It's a big role. It is a cheat that satisfies me. I'll try a handful of that. What's next? High glycemic, but still whole food. That would be raisins. Raisins would be a good example. It's high glycemic, but it's a whole food. I'm eating the whole plant as God intended. I think that's good for me. If that weren't satisfying, I'd probably have some club crackers. I like club crackers. They're refined white flour. They'll hit my system. They're probably, the glycemic index is fairly high. But I like them. And only then would I ever consider having sugar. Now that's been a long time. I've had a whole process to go through. And I will tell you something. For me, it has worked. There are so many times when I am offered sugar and I think to myself, I could have this, I would enjoy it. But you know what? I would enjoy more going home and having a handful of Fritos. This is where the psychology comes in. I could see eating Fritos as a failure, right? I could see having Diet Coke or Diet Mountain Dew as a failure. I could see snacking on almonds as a failure. I could see having that handful of Fritos as a failure. I could see having some raisins as a failure. Or toasting myself a piece of toast or eating some club crackers. But I don't choose to look at it that way. I got rid of sugar. I'll tell you, since I have done this, I've had almost no sugar. All of it, none of it has been just walking by and grabbing it. All of it has been intentional. I go through my day, and these aren't cheats. These are ways to protect myself from the worst thing. They are victory. And I have found a way that I can eat a meal, typically just going through it in the morning. I have one of these chemicals, not the pop, but I have a shake that is made. It's an Atkins product. I have one of those shakes. It makes me feel pretty full. It fools my body into thinking that it's had what it needs. It has about 4 carbs. So there's a few minions going to work, but not many. Most of the blood sugar that comes is used as energy. When I start to feel hungry, I will have a handful of almonds. And usually that's all I need until it gets to lunch. At lunch, I'll sit down to a meal that is a low-carb meal. I'll leave the carbs out. I've asked my wife at every meal, at least let there be one thing that I can fill up on. So I will fill up on, have a nice big portion of the cauliflower. Have a nice big portion of the meat, of anything that isn't carb. All right? I go through, and maybe later I'm feeling a little bit of hunger. I'll try some almonds. If that doesn't, I might have a few Fritos. I have given myself popcorn as not a cheat, but as an incentive. If I go out and I do my exercise, I will take 1/4 of a cup of popcorn and I'll pop it. That gives my stomach the sense of being full. It's some carbs, but those carbs are here in the medium glycemic index, and they're the whole food. There's lots of fiber in the hull. But I have managed to cut out almost completely, cut out sugars, very, very few complex carbs, and even the high glycemic. And in 4 months, without starving myself, I am down 45 pounds. I don't know how much further I'll go down as I work out a little bit more. And I want to tell you, the first 30 pounds I did without working out. I kind of hit a plateau, and then I added in a workout, a very low-key workout, but it was something that fit me. I'll maybe tell about that if there's interest. So the first 30 pounds I did just on doing this. This is what worked for me. I still snack. I still feel satisfied. I have a lot of success. I trade that success. I decide not to have just that little bowl of ice cream because I look forward to having a bowl of Fritos. And that's not a loss. That's a win. I drink some Diet Pop because it's better than craving. And most of my minions are sitting at home bored. Occasionally, bring a few to work, a little bit of fat, a little bit of regulating the sugar, and then they go back home. I have avoided what for so much of my life I did is I called in all the minions. There's my can of Coke, all the minions. Store the fat, pull the blood sugar out. No, not me. Minion unemployment is not my business. I hope that this has maybe given you a sense of wanting to research some things. I hope it's given you hope. Or if not, I hope it's been an entertaining chance to hear a little bit of my talk. Thanks so much. Have a great day.